A man who possesses clarity about his desires has always intrigued me. I have consistently adhered to this belief throughout my life. When I encounter something or someone that captivates my attention, I act decisively without hesitation or doubt. This principle was vividly illustrated the first time I laid eyes on him. It was an ordinary Tuesday, and I had no expectation that the day would unfold any differently than those preceding it. I had intended to visit the new restaurant down the street, a charming establishment featuring large windows, dark wooden tables, and a warm, inviting ambience spilling onto the sidewalk. Upon entering, I was immediately enveloped by the aroma of freshly baked bread and simmering spices. The restaurant was bustling yet not overwhelming, the kind of place where one could easily lose track of time. Then, I spotted him, and suddenly, forgetting the outside world became effortless. He moved gracefully between tables, balancing a tray with one hand, navigating the crowd as if he were meant to be in motion. His slim physique, defined features, and soft brown hair that fell perfectly across his forehead drew my attention. Although his uniform was simple black slacks and a white button-down shirt, there was something about the way it fit him that commanded my focus. However, it was not solely his appearance that captivated me, it was the way he carried himself. There was a quiet strength and a gentleness about him, yet beneath that exterior, I sensed a deeper complexity that intrigued me before I could articulate it. I settled into a booth, observing as he took an order a few tables away. His voice was smooth, polite, and measured. When our eyes met for a fleeting moment, I perceived a flicker of something unspoken, a hesitation, a glance that lingered just a fraction too long before he looked away. In that instant, I understood. Moments later, he approached my table, sliding a menu in front of me while offering a practiced yet sincere smile. "Welcome. May I get you anything to drink to start?" I allowed my gaze to rest on him for a moment longer than necessary before responding, "Just water for now." He nodded, jotting it down with fingers that were quick, precise, and delicate. "Do you have any recommendations?" I inquired, maintaining a casual and relaxed tone. He looked up, a flicker of surprise crossing his face before he regained his composure. "It depends on what you're in the mood for." I smirked, replying, "Something good." He let out a quiet laugh, shaking his head. "You're going to need to be a bit more specific than that." I appreciated his response. He was neither flustered nor overly eager to please, simply at ease in his own space. Thus, I allowed him to make the choice. The food was excellent, though I hardly tasted it, as I was too engrossed in observing him. I attempted to be discreet, or at least I hoped I was, but I noticed him stealing glances as well, his eyes darting toward me when he thought I wasn't paying attention, his hands adjusting the cuffs of his sleeves in that familiar manner people adopt when trying to occupy themselves. When he presented the check, I took my time retrieving my wallet, carefully placing a small note on the receipt before departing, just a number, nothing more. However, I was confident he would comprehend its significance, and I sensed he would not disregard it. I did not have to wait long. That very evening, my phone illuminated with a message from an unknown number. "Hey, it's Caleb from the restaurant. I hope it's alright that I texted." I smirked, of course, it was alright. I had left that number anticipating a response. I took my time replying, not wanting to appear overly eager, though my fingers itched to type more quickly. "I was hoping you would. Had a feeling you might." A pause followed, indicated by 3 blinking dots. "I wasn't sure if you intended it as a friendly gesture or..." I leaned back in my chair, rolling my shoulders as I contemplated how to phrase my response just right. "I don't give my number to just anyone." It was simple and direct. I could almost sense his hesitation through the screen, as if he were weighing his next words, perhaps glancing around his room, uncertain if he should proceed. Then, finally, "I finish work at 7 p.m. That was all I needed to know for the following evening. Instead of going to the restaurant, I chose to stay at home. I was determined not to make him too comfortable too quickly. He was young and uncertain, clearly not accustomed to taking the initiative, but his intrigue was evident. At 7:45, I received another text, "I'm outside." Before opening the door, I glanced at myself in the hallway mirror. My broad shoulders and strong physique reflected the discipline I had maintained over the years. I looked good, and I was aware of it. I stepped outside, leaning against the doorframe, observing him hesitate on the sidewalk. His hands were buried in his jacket pockets, shifting nervously from one foot to the other, unsure if he should approach. "I thought you weren't coming," I remarked, my voice steady and smooth. His head snapped up. "I almost didn't, but here I am," he replied, swallowing hard and nodding. I opened the door wider. "Come inside." He entered as if stepping into a different realm, his eyes scanning the clean, modern space illuminated by warm lighting, with a faint scent of bourbon lingering in the air. I noticed how his shoulders tensed and how he avoided making direct eye contact. "Are you nervous?" I inquired. His lips parted slightly, as if he wanted to deny it, but he exhaled and nodded subtly. I found that appealing. I moved closer, deliberately, observing how his posture stiffened, as if bracing himself for something unknown, yet he was aware of his desire. "Don't be," I said, noticing how he swallowed hard, his hands twitching at his sides, as if he wanted to reach out but hesitated. I decided to take the initiative. I lifted my hand, brushing my fingers along his wrist, trailing upward slowly enough for him to pull away if he wished. He remained still, his breath hitching, his pulse racing beneath my fingertips. Leaning in slightly, I lowered my voice. "You came all this way, are you sure you don't know why?" His lips parted, but no words emerged. I smiled subtly, and at last, he raised his gaze to meet mine, signaling that we were not going to halt our progression. The moment lingered between us, laden with unexpressed thoughts, the atmosphere charged in a manner that neither of us could overlook. Caleb remained stationary, positioned in the middle of my living room, his shoulders squared, yet his chest rose and fell slightly too rapidly, as if his body had already determined the direction of this encounter before his mind could fully comprehend it. I took a measured step closer, my eyes fixed on his, eager to witness the flicker of uncertainty, the way his fingers twitched at his sides, revealing the internal struggle within him. I had experienced this before, the instant when curiosity meets realization, when instinct overrides doubt, and when someone finally permits themselves to yield. "You've never done this before, have you?" I whispered, observing the way his throat moved as he swallowed, the tension in his jaw suggesting he wished to argue, yet he knew that would be disingenuous. He exhaled sharply, shifting his weight from one foot to the other, his gaze momentarily dropping to the floor before snapping back to me. "Not like this." I refrained from pressing him for further details, it was unnecessary. The truth was evident in his posture, in the way his body responded, and in the rapid, erratic rhythm of his pulse beneath his skin. Regardless of his level of experience, I possessed enough for both of us. I reached for him once more, my fingers gliding over the fabric of his sleeve, trailing down until my palm rested gently against his wrist. His breath hitched, yet he did not withdraw, he had no desire to retreat. "You are here now," I stated, my voice steady but imbued with a weightier essence than mere words, "and you are not fleeing." He inhaled sharply, his body tensing as if he wished to object, to assert that he could still turn around and exit through that door, pretending this moment had never transpired. But then, almost instantaneously, I perceived it, the instant he relinquished his resistance. His shoulders sagged, and his hands clenched. For a brief moment before unfolding, he exhaled, and this time, his breath was not shaky, it was steady and assured. His gaze met mine, and while uncertainty lingered, it was overshadowed by a more intense feeling, one that burned brighter than any hesitation. "I don't want to run," he confessed, his voice barely above a whisper yet resonating deeply within me. I did not allow him another moment to second-guess himself. I closed the distance between us in a single, fluid motion, my hand resting on his waist, feeling his warmth through the thin fabric of his shirt. His body tensed at the initial contact but soon relaxed into it. He exhaled slowly, and I felt the warmth of his breath against my collarbone, unsteady yet inviting. I leaned in, my lips hovering just above his ear, and then I stopped overthinking. In that instant, he surrendered completely. I sensed the moment he let go, his hands gripping my shirt as if seeking something solid to anchor himself, as if he were bracing for the loss of control. His breath caught when my finger traced along his back, following the gentle contours of his spine, a soft exhale escaping him as I drew him closer, erasing any remaining space between us. His body radiated warmth, taut and alive with nervous energy, as if he had been waiting for this moment without even realizing it, having spent so long denying himself that he was unsure how to respond when he finally gave in. I, however, knew precisely how to navigate this moment. I was not in a hurry. I possessed patience, control, and a clear understanding of what this encounter was and what it required. I was not an impulsive youth diving recklessly into the unknown. I had encountered men like him before, felt their hesitations, and witnessed them unravel the instant they allowed themselves to embrace desire. I wanted him to experience every moment, every touch, and judging by the way his breath hitched and faltered, the way his hand cautiously explored my chest, his fingers gripping just enough to indicate he was uncertain about how to ask for more. He was fully immersed in the moment as I allowed my lips to graze his jaw, a gentle caress across his skin. My fingers pressed more firmly against his waist, providing him with stability and grounding. His hands began to move again, this time with greater confidence, gliding upward over my shoulders. His fingers curled around the back of my neck, as if he had made the decision to hold on tightly. I sensed the instant when uncertainty ceased to dominate the atmosphere, replaced by an overwhelming need. He reached for me first, and the air between us ignited with intensity. It was not hurried or chaotic, rather, it was intentional and unhurried, designed to endure. His hands glided over my skin, exploring and absorbing every reaction, every subtle change in my breath, and every shift of my body beneath him. His heartbeat thudded against my chest, a steady yet erratic rhythm that conveyed everything I needed to understand. He was no longer afraid, neither of me nor of this connection, and I felt the same. The night stretched infinitely, as if we had entered a realm where time held no sway, where nothing beyond these walls held significance. The world could wait as the night unfolded, an unexpected yet inevitable occurrence. The tension that had begun in the restaurant, building with every exchanged glance, every moment of hesitation, and every silence filled with unspoken understanding, had finally reached its breaking point. There was no room for second-guessing or overthinking. It was too late for that. I felt it in the way he held onto me, his fingers gripping my shoulders, his body pressed closely against mine, heat emanating between us like a flame yearning for oxygen. He was no longer hesitant, no longer questioning himself, me, or the implications of this moment. He had fully surrendered to it. That trust, that raw and unfiltered willingness, surged through my veins, instilling a profound sense of certainty that I was precisely where I belonged. His breath came in quick, uneven gasps, and his pulse raced beneath my fingertips as I held him close, my hands steadying and guiding him, ensuring he understood that there was no need to rush. He needed to understand that he did not have to be anyone other than himself in this moment. His body was tense, vibrating with energy, not from fear, but from desire. I leaned in, pressing my lips against the side of his jaw, allowing them to linger as I sensed his sharp exhale and the way his fingers dug slightly deeper into my back, as if seeking something to anchor himself to. "I've got you," I whispered against his skin, my voice low and steady, a promise. His grip tightened in response. I recognized the way he moved. It was no longer hesitant but exploratory. Each touch was intentional and slow, as if he were charting the contours of my body, learning every reaction and shift in my breath. He was allowing himself to feel, and I encouraged him to take his time. His fingers traced over my arms and then my chest, his touch light yet assured, growing bolder with each passing moment. His breath caught when my hand slid lower, my palm pressing against his back, my fingertips gliding down his spine, eliciting a visible shudder from him. I had sensed his sensitivity from our first encounter, the way he responded to the slightest graze of my fingers, how his body leaned into it, yearning for more. Now, he was no longer holding back, and neither was I. I guided him gently, moving at his pace, allowing him to explore what he desired, what he needed, what felt right. My hands framed his face, my thumbs brushing over his jaw as I took my time to memorize every detail. His skin was warm, his lips slightly parted, and his gaze locked onto mine, filled with an indescribable emotion that resonated deep within me. I kissed him slowly, deeply, and deliberately, not hurried or frantic, but infused with everything that had been building between us since our first meeting. This time, he met me halfway, his hands tangled in my hair, his body pressing closer, his lips moving against mine with a hunger that stemmed from having restrained himself for too long. We were no longer holding back. The room faded away, and the world outside these walls ceased to exist. There was only the sensation. His body pressed against mine, our breaths intertwining, the steady rhythm of his heartbeat syncing with my own. He gasped as I kissed my way down his throat, his head tilting back slightly, fingers flexing against my shoulders. Each sound he made, every reaction he displayed, only intensified my desire to give him more. I allowed my hands to explore the contours of his waist, the sharp curve of his hip, and the way his body responded beneath my touch instinctively, naturally, as if he had been anticipating this moment without even realizing it. Time seemed to dissolve, the room was dimly lit, the air thick with heat and an unspoken intimacy that neither of us could articulate. I felt him sigh against me, his hand gliding down my arms, his body completely relaxed, trusting, and open. This was not merely about attraction or the tension that had lingered from the beginning, it was a profound connection, palpable in every slow, deliberate movement, every shared breath, and the way we fit together as if we had always been destined for this. I had never experienced anything like this before, and judging by the look in his eyes afterward, neither had he. We remained still for a long time, enveloped in silence, the night stretching around us. My arm lay across his waist, his head resting against my chest, warm and steady, his breathing even, fingers tracing patterns along my skin. I let my hand glide through his hair, slow and languid, savoring the moment because neither of us wished to leave it. Eventually, he sighed, tilting his head to meet my gaze, an unreadable expression on his face. "What now?" he asked quietly. I exhaled, brushing my thumb over his cheek, a small, knowing smile forming on my lips. "Whatever you want," I murmured. "I'm not going anywhere." He released a soft, relieved breath, and for the first time that night, I saw not hesitation or uncertainty, but peace. In that moment, I realized this was not just a fleeting encounter, it marked the beginning of something genuine. In this moment, not quite as it was before, not with him present, not at this time, yet something akin to it lingered. I had envisioned what it would be like to finally allow someone to peel away the layers of control, to cease holding back, to permit myself to simply exist. However, nothing had prepared me for the reality of the situation, nothing had equipped me for him. The atmosphere in the room was dense and warm, imbued with the residual weight of our recent exchange. Caleb remained close, his breathing slow and steady, his fingers tracing aimless circles on my skin as if he were unaware of his actions. His body was completely relaxed, fitting against mine as if he had always belonged there. I was unaccustomed to this, I had never experienced someone remaining in my life. For years, I had engaged in a game governed by rules of my own making, never allowing complications to arise. I had kept others at a distance, maintaining boundaries and an understanding that nothing would extend beyond the present moment. Yet, as I lay there with my arm draped over Caleb's waist, my hand gently stroking his back and feeling the soft rhythm of his breath, I recognized that this was different, and I could not dismiss it. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft, tentative yet assured. "I didn't think it would feel like this." I looked down at him, noticing the slight furrow in his brow as he grappled with unexpected thoughts. His fingers continued to move over my skin, their touch gentle and deliberate, as if he were committing the moment to memory, reluctant to let it fade too quickly. "More," he said, the word lingering in the air. More than he anticipated, more than he believed I could offer, more than he realized he desired. I refrained from asking for clarification, fully aware of his meaning. I had spent years evading this very sensation, convincing myself that it was preferable that way. I lacked the patience for complexities, it seemed simpler to keep things superficial. However, the reality was that I had been yearning for something enduring, something that would not merely ignite and then extinguish. Unintentionally, this had evolved into that very something between us. I tightened my hold around his waist, adjusting my position to gaze at him properly, absorbing the way his skin radiated softly in the dim light, the slight swell of his lips, and the clarity in his eyes that revealed an unexpected trust. There was no longer any hesitation in his expression, no signs of nervousness or doubt regarding his place in this moment. This realization stirred something within me, as it transcended the events that had transpired between us, it encompassed what it signified for both of us and for the new chapter we had just begun. I ran my hand gently along his back, my fingers gliding over his spine, noting how he shivered at my touch, how his body responded to me even now, despite everything. I allowed my hand to rest at the nape of his neck, tilting his chin slightly until our eyes met once more. "Are you okay?" I inquired, my voice softer, imbued with a deeper significance than the words alone conveyed. His lips formed a slow, weary smile as his fingers traced a languid pattern across my chest. "Yeah," he murmured, "better than okay." I exhaled slowly, the corners of my mouth lifting slightly as I pressed my forehead against his, allowing my eyes to close for a brief moment. The sensation in my chest, that warmth enveloping me, was not merely satisfaction, it was something more profound, something I was not yet prepared to define, yet I felt no fear towards it. The night unfolded quietly, a silence that required no words. Eventually, he shifted closer, resting his head against my shoulder as if he belonged there, as if he had always belonged there. His breathing steadied, his body relaxed completely, and I realized he had drifted off to sleep. I remained awake a little longer. Observing him, I became acutely aware of the significance of the moment, allowing it to permeate my being as if it were an enduring presence. I did not experience restlessness, there was no urge to withdraw, nor did I feel the familiar compulsion to maintain distance to avoid complications. Instead, a sense of tranquility enveloped me, as if I had finally released something I had not recognized I was clinging to. As my eyelids began to flutter shut, my final reflection was that this was no longer merely a fleeting moment. It marked the inception of something substantial, and for the first time in many years, I felt prepared to embrace it.